The residence of Jacob Rothschild is the subject of a recent video that is currently gaining widespread attention. Surprisingly, it does not appear to be in the condition that we had anticipated it to be in. The Rothschilds, who are well known for their enormous riches and influence in the world of finance, have a side of their heritage that is less well known, a mansion that has fallen into neglect and rot. This Rothschild estate, which was once a magnificent structure, today remains a frightening reminder of its former magnificence. It is located in a secluded location, approximately 5 miles distant from the famous Notre Dame Cathedral. A new video of the Rothschilds' estate, which is currently going viral and is referred to as the Decaying Mansion, will be shown to you in this video. James Mayer de Rothschild, one of the wealthiest men in the world and the most prominent banker in France, made the purchase of the Chateau Rothschild in the year 1817. This is the beginning of the story. It was a testimony to the Rothschild money, a symbol of their opulence and influence, and this Neo-Louis XIV palace was a testament to that fortune. In a manner that was reminiscent of the splendor of Versailles, the chateau stood proudly around gardens that had been extremely well maintained. A magnificent waterfall, vivid flower beds, and calm walks that lead to hidden corners of tranquility were all features of the regal English garden that the property possessed. In the interior of the mansion, the walls were filled with amazing frescoes that were created by the well-known artist Eugene Lamy. One of the things that contributed to the attractiveness of the Chateau Rothschild was the detailed paintings that represented scenes that were beautiful, elegant, and contained historical value. Over more than 8 years, James and his wife Betty were responsible for throwing the most spectacular parties of the era entirely within these walls. Influential figures from the fields of art, music, literature, and finance visited the halls of the Chateau Rothschild, which became a hub of cultural and intellectual interchange. The Chateau Rothschild attracted the cream of society, which included influential figures from these fields. On the guest list was a who's who of the age, including the musical genius Frédéric Chopin, who dedicated his Valop 64 No. 2 in C minor to Charlotte Rothschild, the Rothschild's daughter. The atmosphere at the chateau was filled with the melodies of Chopin's masterpieces, and the room was filled with the sound of champagne glasses being clinked and the laughing of distinguished guests. The extravagant ballrooms of the Chateau Rothschild, which were equipped with crystal chandeliers, were a sight to behold. These ballrooms conveyed the elegance and sophistication that was prevalent during that period. To create a haven of elegance and refinement behind these walls, the Rothschilds spared no expense in carrying out their vision. As the sun began to drop over the chateau, its magnificent exterior began to illuminate, emitting a hypnotic radiance that fascinated everybody who came into contact with it. A shining example of riches, power, and cultural relevance, the Chateau Rothschild was a prominent figure. Because war clouds were gathering over Europe, the Rothschild family was forced to make the tough decision to leave their cherished house to avoid the imminent threat of harm. After leaving the Chateau Rothschild behind, they made their way to England in search of safety. The Germans arrived in Paris not long after they left, and they occupied the city for the grim years of World War II. Because of its splendor, the Chateau Rothschild became a target for the occupying forces, who saw it as an opportunity to pillage. The mansion, which had been a representation of wealth and grandeur in the past, was destroyed by the wreckage of the war. The chateau was reduced to a shadow of its former grandeur after German soldiers stole its assets and used them for their purposes. When their cherished home was being desecrated, the Rothschild family could only observe it from on high. An entirely new chapter in the history of the Chateau Rothschild family began with the liberation of Paris. It was not, however, a chapter that was characterized by restoration and renewal. The mansion, on the other hand, was converted into a temporary residence for the United States Army, which settled into the property. A stay of the Chateau Rothschild by the United States Army did not augur well for the preservation of the building, because the soldiers, who were unaware of the estate's historical value, regarded it as if it were nothing more than a place to sleep. The mansion continued to deteriorate. Over the decades that followed, the Chateau Rothschild established itself as a playground for vandals and graffiti artists. There was a striking contrast between the richness that it formerly emanated and the fact that its once majestic hallways were now coated with layers of paint and graffiti. Even in modern times, the Chateau Rothschild continues to serve as a spooky reminder of its former magnificence. The walls of this building, which were previously graced with beautiful frescoes, today exhibit the scars of neglect and time. Once upon a time, the grandeur that enthralled the most influential members of society has been reduced to a deteriorating shell. In addition, the house has been impacted by the natural environment. The Shadow Rothschild is now surrounded by dense bramble and shrubs, which further obscures the once grand face of the building. In stark contrast to the deterioration that can be found inside the mansion, Edmund Rothschild Park, which is located just beyond the walls of the mansion, features a verdant lawn. Edward Burge, an urban explorer, went inside the abandoned mansion and took some unique images that provided insight into the current status of the building. The passage of time and the horrible end that befell the Shadow Rothschild are both reflected in these eerie photographs, which serve as a testimony to both of these events. A limited number of efforts have been made to bring the Shadow Rothschild back to its former glory. Potential buyers and investors have been dissuaded from becoming interested in the property due to the startling amount of 30 million euros that is projected to be required for renovation. Time has taken its toll on the once beautiful paintings painted by Eugene Lamy that are located inside the estate. These frescoes have become faded and crumbly. The great ballrooms, which were once replete with song and laughter, are now silent, and the echoes of their music are nothing more than a hint of the past. The Shadow Rothschild is surrounded by overgrown foliage, which has contributed to the spooky ambience that surrounds it. Protecting the mansion from prying eyes is accomplished through the use of dense foliage and thorns as a barrier. It's almost as if the natural world itself is guarding the mysteries that are concealed beneath these crumbling walls. Uncertainty persists regarding the future of the Shadow Rothschild family. A rescuer has not yet been found for the mansion, even though it was designated as a historical monument in 1951 and has significant historical significance. There is still the question of whether or not the deteriorating Rothschild estate in Paris will ever make a comeback to its former brilliance. The enchantment of the Shadow Rothschild continues to fascinate people's imaginations, even though it is currently inaccessible to visitors. The images taken by urban explorer Edward Burge provide an insight into its current state, enabling us to observe the eerie beauty that is contained within. Nevertheless, the Shadow Rothschild is not the only property that Jacob owns. The Wadsdam Manor, which was designed by Charlotte Skeen-Catling and Jamie Fobert, is another property that he owns. The monolithic structure of Wadsdam Manor, which is covered in a quartz coating that ranges from dark, glassy colors to chalky whites, is a monument to the architectural brilliance that the manor possesses. Thanks for watching. Kindly like and subscribe for more videos. In the comments section below, please tell me how many you discovered.